Hello and welcome to video 3 for section 8.3. In this video we'll be looking at multiplication and division of complex numbers. So we have the following in definition. If two complex numbers call them Z1 and Z2 have polar forms, so if you recall in video 2, that's what the basis of what we were doing was, is we were converting our complex number into polar form. So if we have two complex numbers, Z1, Z2, and if they have polar form, then we have the following. So Z1 would be equal to R1, and then cosine theta 1 plus I sine theta 1. And we'll call Z2 would have polar form R2 cosine of theta 2 plus I sine of theta 2. So two different complex numbers, so their R values could be different, their thetas could be different. Thus the notation, the R1, R2, theta 1, theta 2. So if they have that form, then we get the following. For multiplication, Z1 times Z2 is equal to R1 times R2, and then cosine of theta 1 plus theta 2 plus I sine of theta 1 plus theta 2. The division, so if we have Z1 divided by Z2, this is R1 divided by R2 times cosine of theta 1 minus theta 2 plus I sine theta 1 minus theta 2. And of course, because we have a Z2 in the denominator, and it would have R of 0, so therefore Z2 cannot be 0. So if Z2 is 0, obviously we can't divide by 0, it would be undefined. So we get those two equations. Z1, Z2 is R1 times R2, and then we add the thetas, and Z1 divided by Z2, we divide the R values, and then we subtract the thetas. So let's look at a couple examples here. So let's say we have the following. So let's let Z1 equal 2 cosine of pi over 4 plus I sine of pi over 4. And Z2 is 5 cosine of pi over 3 plus I sine of pi over 3. So we want to find the product and we want to find the quotient. So we want to find first Z1 times Z2, and then we want to find Z1 divided by Z2. So I'm going to go ahead and erase these formulas here. If you need them, hit pause, otherwise come on back. Hopefully you have them down by now. So to start, for Z1 times Z2, we get what? So if we want to label our pieces, this is our R1, and pi over 4 would be our theta 1. 5 is R2, pi over 3 would be our theta 2. So Z1 is R1 times R2, so 2 times 5. and then cosine of pi over 4 plus pi over 3 plus I sine pi over 4 plus pi over 3. So then it's just a matter of simplification. So 2 times 5 is 10. So we have 4 and 3, so this is like 3 pi over 12 and 4 pi over 12. So if we add them together, that gives us 7 pi over 12 plus I sine, same thing, 7 pi over 12. So that would be our product, so Z1 times Z2. For Z1 divided by Z2, well, it's R1, which is 2, divided by Z2, which is 5. And then cosine of pi over 4 minus pi over 3 plus I sine of pi over 4 minus pi over 3. So we get 2/5 times cosine. So 3 pi over 12 minus 4 pi over 12 is minus pi over 12 plus I sine of minus pi over 12. So that is our multiplication and division of complex numbers. Once the numbers are in polar form, it's pretty straightforward. We just use the formulas, plug in the values, simplify it if we can. If it's not in polar form, if it's not given in polar form, then we need to convert it, much like we did in video 2. So that concludes video 3. Come on back, video 4 will discuss probably the most important topic here in section 8.3, which is Demoivre's theorem.